Hello and welcome to the Gathering Echo. I want to welcome in everybody watching at home, watching live, watching from all around the world, wherever you may be. We've already had a wonderful time this morning in Jesus, and we welcome each and every one of you to come and join us in person. But we are so thankful that you're with us right now. So if you would, stay with us, share this stream, like this stream. We give you the opportunity to give in the link down below. So do all those things, and we're glad you're with us. Now, for everybody that's here, we are in the text of Matthew chapter 11, and for you at home. And I wanted to talk about children of humanity today, okay? Children of humanity, all right? Now, it's a big day. It's a huge day. Because yesterday, Charlie Kello was born. Charlie Kello was born. And for those of you that don't know, that is the daughter of Joshua Kello, as we call him Juice, and Caitlin Kello. And they welcomed in a beautiful baby girl at 4:14 yesterday. So we celebrate. Give her a hand clap. She's not even here yet. We're celebrating her. The joy of the Lord has filled this place because Charlie Kello has made her grand entrance into this wonderful world that we make our abode in. So it's a big day. It's a huge day. It is also, not to be too conceited, but it is also my birthday today. And it's an honor to be speaking on my birthday. It's an honor to be here with you and to be doing this thing because I have to talk about some things that are really reminiscent of these ideas, this reality that we are in what you would call what did Josh say this morning? A meat suit? This being has been gifted into this meat suit that we're walking around in, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So, Josh talked about a couple weeks ago the parable or the hymn of the pearl, right? Who remembers that? Anybody remember that? If you don't know what we're talking about, go back 2 messages on the stream and watch Josh talk. It's the end of the sermon last week. Josh covers the parable of the pearl, and we'll be talking about that a little bit. But I want to read. You've got your text. I want to read something a little bit obscure to you. This is out of the Gospel of Thomas. Okay. Now the Gospel of Thomas was found in about 1945, and it's one of the oldest texts to be found. Right. So the Gospel of Thomas is relatively new as far as being uncovered, but really old. And as you read and parallel the Gospel of Thomas, there's some amazing truths that I've found in it. So the Gospel of Thomas, saying 22, as we're talking about Charlie and we're talking about birthdays, check this out. Jesus saw some babies nursing. He said to his disciples, "These nursing babies are like those who enter the kingdom." They said to him, "Then shall we enter the kingdom as babies?" Jesus said to them, "When you make the two into one, and when you make the inner like the outer, and the outer like the inner, and the upper like the lower." And this is a little bit obscure, but go with me here. "And when you make the male and female into a single one, so that the male will not be male, nor the female be female. When you make eyes in the place of an eye, a hand in the place of a hand, a foot in the place of a foot, and an image in the place of an image, then you will enter the kingdom of heaven." And if you know me, you know that this has just absolutely confirmed a message that I've been preaching since the Splash Pad Kingdom, which says, Jesus takes a little kid and says, "You can't enter the kingdom unless you become as this little child." And then he starts saying all this weird stuff about if your hand offends you, cut it off. And if your foot offends you, cut it off. And if your eye offends you, pluck it out. And I use that idea that he's still talking about being that child, although we don't preach it that way, right? We preach it like, well, if your hand causes you to mess up, you need to cut that thing off, right? If your foot causes you to mess up, you need to cut that foot off. If your eye causes you to mess up, you need to pluck that thing out. And that's the way we've preached it. I mean, it's true. We have preached it that way. Yes, and we've maimed others. That's a very good point. And so I really like that point. Bishop Kello said that we have maimed others with that preaching. That's truth. That's truth, because here you have the Gospel of Thomas actually confirming Matthew 18 and saying, how can you enter the kingdom as a baby? Well, you enter the kingdom when you make eyes in the place of an eye, and a hand in place of a hand, and a foot in place of a foot, and an image in place of an image. So, just a little brief backstory on that. Why would you take a hand and make it into a single hand? Because the hand represents the duality of your humanity. What you can provide with your own hand, right? What do we lean into? What we touch, taste, feel, and see. All the senses, right? We lean into our senses because we are in these meat suits. And we walk around in these meat suits and we don't think about that we've been from the beginning, right? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Yeah, that's you. Except we point back to our birthday and say, well, that's when I started. Wrong. And then you say, well, it was 9 months before that. Wrong. John says, in the beginning was you. You are the Logos, and you've always been. So what is this big deal? The big deal is that you've been put in this body to what? As Josh said last week with the parable of the pearl, he had to go retrieve something. So we've been put here to retrieve something. What have we been put here to retrieve? The pearl of great price. So what is the pearl of great price? Well, that's what we're going to get into. So if your hand offends you, cut it off. Your foot offends you, you cut it off. What does the foot represent? The foot represents walking back into a past without Christ that does not exist. You can't walk back to somewhere that doesn't exist because you're cutting that off, and you have one foot now, one hand now, one eye now. If your eye be single, your whole body will be full of light, right? So that is the haplous that's enfolding into one, and that's seeing one thing. And what's the one thing? That's who you really are. It's who you really are. So, a little brief rundown of the parable of the pearl, or the hymn of the pearl. So there was this kid, right? A little, quite little kid, is how it says. A quite little kid. And he was sent by his family to Egypt to go recover a pearl, right? But to go recover that pearl, he had to take off his robe and take off his mantle because it was made for a little kid, right? So he goes to retrieve that pearl. But once he goes to Egypt, let's think about this a minute. Let me slow down. I'm really excited. Once he goes to Egypt, he's a little child, right? He goes to Egypt as a little child. I want to read an excerpt from my favorite book, Country Called Childhood. Reckless with divinity, childhood knows itself to share the resonant frequency of life in a riff, a rhythm, and a rhyme of the mind. And it holds to that truth, kin to the wind or the life of water. Life is sheer, sudden presence to a child, a transcendence into a feeling of oneness so powerful that the senses themselves become one. And if your eye be single, your whole body is full of light. That's synesthesia. That's what a kid feels when you remember when you were a little girl and you heard the bird singing, and all of a sudden you were like connected with that bird. You were connected with the universe. Maybe you don't remember that. That's the point of the hymn of the pearl. That's what happens to the kid in the hymn of the pearl. He's sent to Egypt to go recover the pearl as a little child. Guess what happens? He goes and he has to get that pearl from this snake that's watching it, this serpent. He had to get the pearl from the serpent. But he goes to get the pearl, and they realize that he's a foreigner, and they start treating him like a foreigner, and they start putting all this responsibility on him and all these duties on him. And before you know it, he's a slave in Egypt. He's working in Egypt. And then he works and he works, and then he forgets who he even is. He forgets that he's a king's son. He forgets that he is a child sent to go retrieve that pearl. And that's what happens. It says he goes into a deep sleep. A deep sleep. And that's what happens to us. We fall into this deep sleep because everybody told us that life was going to be butterflies and rainbows until you graduated high school, and, you know, maybe life didn't go the way you thought it would, and you had a baby a little too early. And then before you know it, oh, we got to pay for this baby. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to work. And then you wake up 20 years later and you've forgotten who you really are. Maybe 30, 40, 50 years later, and you've forgotten who you are. You forgot that you were a quiet little child sent to retrieve a pearl. So, another quote here from Country Called Childhood. Song struck by the wood canticles of a thrush or wren. How many love our little wren? Ain't they so pretty? A little beautiful bird. Just a pretty little bird. Children first hear their music in duet when it sings outside them and inside them. In the unceasing song, willow-voiced and grass-strung. When they hear the bells ring like a stone thrown into the water, ringing out in ring cycles, it circles to eternity. And when those bells, which should be pealing now and always inside a child's mind, when they are jarred and cracked into hollow, broken barrels, then children will be wordlessly, riddingly grief-struck as they try to remember the meaning of the blue flower. And the blue flower, as we've talked about, just a brief summary, the blue flower is something that C.S. Lewis talks about. Many, many, many people in literature, many famous writers allude to this blue flower meaning a longing for longing. A longing for you know not what. A longing for something just beyond the veil. Something just beyond your reach. This is so wild. So we've been talking about the blue flower, right? And Melody keeps asking me, are you going to tell them about my book? I've spoke like 5 times, and she said, have you told them about my book? Have you told them about my book? So I have to tell you about her book today. Regardless if it goes with any of this, I got to tell you about it, right? But it goes with it. So we've been talking about this blue flower, and as you know, when you start living life in rhythm again, in the riff of the Spirit of God again, everything starts getting hyperlinked and interconnected. So Melody has heard us talk about this blue flower, and then she comes home. It's been probably a month ago now. And she says, guess what? I'm reading a book called Blue. She said, and it's about a blue flower. And I'm like, yes, you got to be kidding me, right? And then to come to find out, the book is a historical fiction book written by a lady that I can't remember her name. It's Joyce something. I can't remember her name right. I should have wrote that down, but I didn't. Joyce, I'll get that for you before we end. But she wrote the book, and it's set in Hickory, North Carolina during the polio pandemic. Okay? And it's a beautiful story. So I decided to surprise Melody and start reading the book with her. So I bought the book on my phone, and I read like 6 or 7 chapters, and I asked her about something that happened in like chapter 7, and she's like, oh, you're reading my book. And it was such a connection for her to think, oh my God, my dad is reading the book I'm reading. So now, I shouldn't have told her because she's already finished, and she's coming to me like, you didn't read today? You didn't read today? I'm like, no, I've been working in Egypt. Been trying to retrieve this pearl from this snake. But in that story, there is a flower called wisteria. How many know what wisteria is, right? And it takes over, and it's kind of like kudzu. It just overruns stuff, right? So it's a parasite. So I didn't know that. That's cool. So you learn stuff when you're up here, man. People just bring you knowledge. It's amazing. So the dad and the daughter. So the dad gets sent to war. Okay, he's set in World War II, so he's off to go fight the Nazis. And the girl is left at home to be the man of the house, so to speak. So while her dad was still at home, she and her dad would argue over wisteria because she thought wisteria was this beautiful purple flower, and she loved it. But her dad hated the flower, and he thought it was blue because the blue symbolizes the blueness of his life and the work and the toil of his life. And he looks at this flower as a parasite, as something that I've got to eradicate from my property. So he works to kill this wisteria, and she's like, Dad, please don't kill the flower. It's so beautiful. It makes a little house, and I can go inside my little castle and be a little princess, and please don't kill the flower. So then the dad goes to war, and her little brother gets polio. And at 13 years old, she's having to do the work of a man and then she starts to see the flower as purple or as blue. Because she begins to hate the flower. Because it represents adulthood. It represents manhood. It represents anthropos. It represents the Egypt in this story. That we're forgetting who we are because of the work that we've been told that we have to do. We're forgetting who we are because of the duties that we're responsible for. Because we have listened to the narrative that you are what you do. And you are not what you do. You are who you've always been from the beginning, but you've forgotten, and we've forgotten. You've forgotten who you are. So in the parable of the pearl, he forgets, right? He forgets who he is. And I'm just going to read a little excerpt from it. I know Josh didn't read all of it, but it is a beautiful, beautiful book, or a little poem. So the legend goes that this was written and sang by Thomas in prison. The legend goes that this is a hymn that he is singing in prison to try and uplift his fellow prisoners, and singing it and uplifting himself. So he said, check this out. So his mom and dad write him a letter to remind him who he is, because they find out he's in Egypt, he's got stuck, he's living the life of toil, he's a slave. So we're going to write this letter, his mom, dad, and his brother. They pen a letter that reminds him who he is. Guess how the letter comes? It flew in the form of the eagle. Of all the winged tribes, the kingbird. It flew and alighted beside me and turned into speech altogether. Listen to this. At its voice and the sound of its winging, I woke and arose from my deep sleep. Unto me I looked and kissed it. I loosed its seal and read it. Even as it stood in my heart, wrote, the words of my letter were written. I remembered that I was the king's son, and my rank did long for its nature. I bethought me again of the pearl for which I was sent down to Egypt, and I began then to charm him, the terrible loud-breathing serpent. I lulled him to sleep and to slumber, and chanting o'er him the name of my father. That's how he gets the pearl. He sings the snake to sleep, singing the name of his father, retrieves the pearl, and thereon I snatched up the pearl and turned to the house of my father. And this is what happens on the trip back. They're the filthy and unclean garments I stripped off and left in their country. So he takes off all the garments of slavery, all the clothes that identify him with who he is in Egypt, and he starts on his path back towards home. To the way that I came, I betook me, to the light of our home, to the dawn land. The dawn land. On the road I found there before me my letter that had aroused me, and which its voice it had roused me. So now with its light it did lead me. Of fabric of silk and letter of red, with shining appearance before men, encouraging me with its guidance, with its love, was drawing me onward. Now listen to this. My glorious robe that I'd stripped off, and my mantle with which it was covered, down from the heights of Hyrcania, I can't say that word, Hyrcania, thither my parents did send me. By the hands of their treasure dispensers, who trustworthy were it trusted, without recalling its fashion, listen to this, in the house of my father my childhood had left it. In the house of my father my childhood had left it. At once I saw it, his robe. The glory looked like my own self. I saw it in all of me. I saw me all in all of it. That we were twain in distinction, and yet again one in one likeness. Now what did Jesus say in the Gospel of Thomas? They said, shall we enter the kingdom as babies? Jesus said, when you make the two into one. How do you make the two into one when you realize that this is really a meat suit? And this is not who you are. You are from a country far away. You are from another dimension altogether. You are the Logos. We are the Logos. Now we've been gifted this divine opportunity to do this thing called life in this meat suit and to retrieve this pearl from this snake. And what is the pearl? The pearl is something you could have never gotten outside of the meat suit. The pearl is something you could have never gotten outside of doing this experience in the flesh. So what is the pearl? Josh said it beautifully last week. The pearl was me. The pearl was me. All right. You're in Matthew 11. Let's get to reading some King James. Everybody looks a little weary. We got to read a little Bible. Just a little bit of Bible. Now we're going to read a lot of Bible. We're going to read a little bit of Bible. Matthew chapter 11. verse number 1. Now, this is someone else in prison. This is someone else in prison. He's not writing a letter trying to uplift his prisoners. John's writing a letter, sending a message to Jesus saying, what the flip? That's what John's saying. Verse 1. And it came to pass, when Jesus had made an end of commanding his 12 disciples, he departed thence to teach and to preach in their cities. Now when John had heard in prison the works of Christ, he sent 2 of his disciples and said unto him, art thou he that should come, or do we look for another? If you've been familiar with this ministry, you've heard Bishop Kello minister from this text many times. All right? Verse 4. Jesus answered and said unto them, go and show John again those things which you do hear and see. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear. The dead are raised up, and the poor have the gospel preached to them. And as our bishop so beautifully points out, that he leaves out from Isaiah, as he's quoting Isaiah, and the opening of the prison to the bound. Because that's what John is wanting to hear. That's what John is wanting to hear, because John is in prison. John is locked up. The meat suit is behind bars. Right? And he's sending a message with his disciples. Hey, I know that I've prophesied about this guy. I have baptized this guy. I have done all these things. But now my reality is I am enslaved. I am in prison. I need to know, is he going to put his money where his mouth is? That's what he's wanting his disciples to go ask Jesus. So they go up to Jesus and they say, hey, John is in prison. And he needs to know, are you who you said you were, or should I look for another? And how many of you have prayed that prayer? How many of you have felt that way? I've felt it a lot in my life. I've been through many times where I feel that way. This is not what you promised. This is not what I believed. This is not what you sold me. Are you who you say you are? Because my life does not reflect what I thought it would be. My current situation doesn't reflect the things that I was promised to follow you. John's saying, are you who you say you are? And Jesus decides to quote Isaiah and says, go tell him. Tell him all the things that are going on. Tell him the blind receive their sight, and the lame walk, and the lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear, and the dead are raised, and the poor have the gospel preached to them. And John's disciples know what's coming next, except Jesus stops. Like they know that Jesus is about to say, and I'll open the prison doors, come on out, John. But he does not say that. He doesn't say that because John had lost the idea of who he is. He had forgotten, just like the parable of the pearl, just like the hymn of the pearl, he's forgotten who he was. Thomas writes the song, the hymn of the pearl, from prison. Paul does this as well as he writes his letters from prison. He glorifies in the state he's in the moment he's in. Though it may look like my God's not with me, he's never left me, he's never forsaken me. I know my life might not look like it needs to look, or you may think it would look, or this circumstance that I'm going through doesn't represent what you would think would be happening to a son of God, but I know who I am. How many times our bishop prayed that prayer in the middle of cancer. In the middle of cancer. He could have gave up a long time ago. He could have gave up when he had cancer. But what did he do? He refused to believe the report. He refused to believe the condemnation that had been spoken over his life. He said, I don't have it. He acted like he didn't have it. And guess what? His cancer literally turned on itself and ate itself from the inside out. So John is sending his disciples to go talk to Jesus, saying, please tell me you're going to come and get me out of this, because if you don't, you're not who you said you were. But guess what Jesus did say? Jesus decided not to say, I'll let the prison doors swing wide. He said, and blessed is he who is not offended in me. Hello, Matthew 18. Woe to the world, for offenses must needs come. But woe to the man by whom the offense comes. So what is offense? Offense is scandalizo. To entrap, to trip up, stumble, apostasy. Is it apostasy or apostasize? What's the right way to say it? Apostasy. Entice to sin, offend. It makes one stop believing in oneself and the meaning of oneself. You know what it is? It's exile. It's exile. It is exile. To be offended is to be exiled from the person that offended you and from your own self. Oh my God, I heard this. I'm going to quote a guru, okay? I heard this guru say this. All right, he said this. If someone speaks to you, their words have the ability to hurt you, right? Wrong. The only way that you get hurt by someone's words is if you allow them to hurt you. Because why? Because you react. You react instead of respond. You react to the words instead of responding to the words. So when someone says something to you, you react to that, right? Because you're reacting with the man suit. Oh, you think you can say that to me? Well, guess what? I got something for you. That's reaction. But then when somebody, says something to you that you don't allow it to hurt you, you say, okay, I don't have to say anything right now. I'm going to respond to that. I'll respond to that, not react to that. How do you respond to something? You don't have to say anything at all. John was reacting to being in prison. John was reacting to being in prison. He wasn't responding to being in prison. Jesus said, blessed is he whosoever shall not be offended in me. And as they depart, verse 7, and as they departed, Jesus began to say unto the multitudes concerning John, what went you out here into the wilderness to see? A man clothed in soft raiment? Behold, they that wear soft clothing are in kings' houses. But what went ye out here to see? A prophet? Yea, I say unto you, and more than a prophet. For this is he, of whom it is written, behold, I send my messenger before thy face, which shall prepare thy way before thee. Now in the hem of the pearl, there's messengers that bring his robe to him on the way back. Right? And that's what we are here to do. We are to have the ministry of reconciliation, or the ministry of re-robing. We have the ministry of reconciliation, which is reconciling everyone to God, or the ministry of re-robing, putting on the robe that you stripped off when you were a kid to go to Egypt, the meaning, the name, the pearl. We are to re-robe mankind with their true identity, to turn the two, the duality, into one. Check this out. If I can find, check this out. Check this out. Time for a little bit more. Gospel of Thomas, saying 46. Check this out. From Adam to John the Baptizer, among those born of women there is none greater than John the Baptizer, so that his eyes should not be averted. But I say that whoever among you becomes a child will know the kingdom and will become greater than John. Let me tell you, the Gospel of Thomas says it better than the King James Version. I can't believe he said that. Yeah, I said it. The Gospel of Thomas says it better. Because we can read the King James Version. Verily I say unto you, among them that are born of women, there hath not risen greater than John the Baptist. Notwithstanding, he that is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. Saying 15 from the Gospel of Thomas. Check this out. Jesus said, when you see one who was not born of woman, fall on your faces and worship. That is your Father. When you see one who was not born of woman, fall on your faces and worship. That is your Father. Our brother Francois Dutoit would say it like this, Psalm 23, by the waters of reflection, my soul remembers who I am. So who's the one that you're going to fall on your... We just talked about this Wednesday night. Who's the one that you're going to fall on your face and worship? It's you. It's God in your brother, in your sister, in your family, in your friends, in the mirror. When you see one not born of woman, that is your Father. You're hearing the voice of God. In the beginning was the Word, the Logos, and it was pros. It was with God. That word with in the King James should have been like 1,500 words, but instead they said with. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was face to face with God. And that was you. So when you see one not born of women, fall on your knees and worship, because that is your Father. Face to face with God. Verse 12. Verse 12. And from the days of John the Baptist until, we're not going to read that. I'm not even going to do it. Verse 15. Verse 15. He that hath ears, let him hear. He that hath ears, let him hear. Let him hear what? I don't know, maybe that song that we were talking about. Maybe that bird song. Maybe that flapping of the eagle wing that becomes the voice altogether that says, you're a king's son. Let he that hath an ear, let him hear. Verse 16. But whereunto, this is huge, but whereunto shall I liken this generation? It is like children sitting in the markets and calling unto their fellows, and saying, we have piped unto you, and you have not danced. We have mourned unto you, and you have not lamented. For John came neither eating or drinking, and they say he hath a devil. But the Son of Man, this is going to get fun. This is going to get fun. The Son of Man. What's the Son, Michael? What's the word for son? Huios. Huios. Would you like to hear how Jesus refers to son in this scripture? Son is huios, and that means foal. Foal. And you know what a foal is? A little horse. A child horse. I know. I know. I know. The Son of Man. So he's pointing to these children in the market, piping, dancing, right? They're singing, they're dancing. We invite you to come and worship with us, but those of you here this morning, my son had his little ukulele. He's not even 2 years old. And he was up here rocking with us, right? He was in the Spirit of God this morning, right? He was with it. He was up here with his little ukulele just going for it. And you know what he was doing? He was piping unto you. But some of you may have had the old religious mind kick in. Some of you may have had the old religious mind saying, that stage belongs to adults, not little ones. Some of you may have had that little thought pop up in your mind. Maybe. I'm only saying it because I sensed it a little bit. I sensed it even in myself, like, okay, well, it's getting a little crazy. Let's pull him back down here. Let's pull it back down here. Let's calm it down. But he is the one piping unto you, and you're not dancing. He's the one mourning unto you, and you're not lamenting. The children that just walked out to Sunday school are the ones wanting to lead the way, but we've always said that this is the man's job, right? Wrong. The boy remembered who he was, and the man, he stripped off his garments in Egypt. He remembered that he came there as a quiet little child to retrieve a pearl. And he retrieved that pearl by singing over the serpent the name of his father. And when you see someone not born of woman, you will fall and worship, because that is your still and not troubled. What do you see? You see your reflection. And by the waters of reflection, my soul remembers who I am. He leads me beside still waters. The Son of Man, the foal of man, the child of man, the kid of man. Can you go grab Marshall for me, please? The Son of Man came eating and drinking. And they say, behold, a man gluttonous and a winebibber, a friend of publicans and sinners. But wisdom is justified of her children. Wisdom is justified of her children. Now, Malachi, come up. Malachi, come up. Marshall, come up. Come here for a second. I'm breaking the unwritten rules here. So, let me get Yeah, let me come around this side. Come around this side. Come around this side. All right, you stay away. Stay right there. Now you come here. Come here. Come around here. Now, come here. Come here. Now this is my son, right? This is my son. Okay? He's 13. Look at that little stash, right? Look at that stash, okay? He's 13, okay? He's got mustache going on. So what does he look like? Looks like a man. So when Jesus says Son of Man, who do you think about? This? Or, all right, no offense, but come here. Or do you see this? Because when Jesus said Huios, foal, the child of man, that's who he refers to himself as. The Huios of man, the son of Anthropos. All right, there you go. There you go. All right. And he is imitating me. That's a beautiful, beautiful analogy. So that little boy, for those of you watching at home, he's imitating his father, right? So when I get up here and I play the guitar and I sing at home and I play at home, he wants to get his little ukulele, his ukulele. That was pretty cool. I bet you I could do that again. I don't know. So he wants to get his little ukulele and play it because of why? Because he has nothing telling him that he's any different than his father. Nothing. Nothing tells him that he has any less right to be up here and play, which he doesn't. He's got the right. He has the right. But we let the world say, okay, you want to be a guitar player? Then you need to do, and then one day you might be a guitar player. You want to be a doctor? Then one day you'll be a doctor. You want to be a singer? One day you'll be a singer. My little girl had a career day. I didn't get to go to it because I was at work, but my wife sends me pictures of her at her career day, and she's got her little poster board up here, and it's beautiful, and there's little dancing girls on it, and she wants to have her own studio. That's her dream. She wants to have her own dance studio, okay? But the problem that I had with the picture was my little girl was just enamored by this board that she had made, and it's so beautiful, and it gives all these categories, except on the right-hand side, it said salary expectations. Because that's career day, right? She's 10 years old. 10 years old. And they're already taking her desires and her life and her hope and her heart and her love and putting a dollar figure beside of it. My friends, this is not the way of the Lord. This is not the way of God. This is not Egypt. Now, yes, we have to retrieve the pearl from Egypt, but we were not born in Egypt. We were not born in Egypt. We were born in the homeland, in the promised land, in the dawn land. So, when she gets that little board home, I'm going to rip that salary expectation off of that board. Because we tell it, and I've even made this mistake because I've lived this way. I've lived under this guise of you're the amount you're making, or you're the car you drive, or you're the house you own. And that is not right. All these things will pass away, but the word of the Lord will endure forever. And the word of the Lord to my little girl is she wants to have a dance studio. And I don't give a rip. She makes $5 a year. Let her go have her dance studio. Let her go dance. Let her go love. Let her go spread her light to the world. Some little kid beside of her had some kind of career where they had $250,000, Kristen was saying. And you know that those parents were walking through that line like, yes, this is our child. Here she is. She's going to succeed and be miserable just like us. She's going to have the house. She's going to have the car. But deep down inside, you leave the robe of who you really are to go to Egypt to retrieve something. And then you spend so long trying to retrieve. We're here for a reason, guys. Our life has meaning. We have purpose. We have a pearl that we're supposed to retrieve. So let me be the eagle today that lights beside of you and reminds you that you're a king's son. You're a king's daughter. So the foal of man, the child of man, came eating and drinking. They say, behold, a glutton, a winebibber, a friend of publicans and sinners. But wisdom is justified in her children. Verse 20. All right, verse 20 through 24, this is awesome. Jesus begins to upbraid all these cities, which means he begins to turn around and shout. Put yourself in this picture here, right? So John's disciples had just came to Jesus, okay? And they had tried to get Jesus to say, I'm going to get John out of jail. Jesus didn't say that. Jesus said, go tell John that I'm exactly who he said I was, and he doesn't need to be offended in me. So then his disciples are like, oh, you want us to go tell John that? Yeah, I want you to go tell John that, because he's identifying himself in the meat suit right now. He's not identifying himself as the one born from the far country, not as the one born in the homeland. And then Jesus, in that same context, turns around into the middle of nowhere and begins to shout at cities. Woe to you. Read it, listen. Woe to you, Chorazin. Woe to you, Bethsaida. For if my mighty works which were done in you had been done in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented long ago. But I say unto you, it shall be more tolerable for Tyre and Sidon at the day of judgment than for you. And woe to you, Capernaum. Woe to you, all these cities that I am piping and dancing in, and you're missing it. But then he says this, verse 25. At that time, Jesus answered and said, I thank thee, O Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hid this pearl. You have hid these things from the wise and the prudent, and has revealed them unto babes. You want to know what prudent means? Prudent means mentally put together, sagacious, showing acute mental discernment and keen practical sense, shrewd. You got your pipe right there. Yes. Yes. I'm very prudent. With your pipe and your stogie, like with all this wisdom, this long beard. I'm a prudent man, right? That's our picture of that's our picture of making it, right? Oh man, I want to be that's what everybody in America wants to be. I want to be a millionaire. I want to make all the money. I want to have all the money. And we watch the drama unfold for all the people that have all the money. And you ask yourself, why would you want any of that? Why would you want to chase after this prudent thing? When Jesus is saying it's not revealed unto the prudent. It's revealed unto the babes. You know what babes are? Nepios. Not speaking. An infant. A simple-minded person. An immature Christian. Babe or child. Even so, Father, for it seemed to be good in thy sight. Verse 27. All things are delivered unto me of my Father. And no man knoweth the foal. No man knoweth the child. Remember, Marshall, not Malachi. Not the man face. The baby. The baby face. All things... Listen, all things are delivered unto me of my Father, and no man knoweth the Son but the Father. Neither knoweth any man the Father save the Son, and he to whomsoever the baby will reveal him. So then, I just provided you the context of 3 of the most popular verses in all of Scripture. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden. Whew. And I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly of heart. And ye shall find rest unto your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Saying 49 of the Gospel of Thomas says, Jesus said, Blessed are those who are alone and chosen, for you will find the kingdom. For you have come from it, and you will return there again. Jesus said, if they say to you, Where have you come from? Say to them, We have come from the light, from the place where the light came into being by itself, established itself, and appeared in their image. If they say to you, Is it you? Say, we are its children, and we are the chosen of the living Father. Now listen. If they ask you, what is the evidence of your Father in you? Say to them, it is motion and rest. It is motion and rest. It is motion and rest. The meat suit is in motion. But inside, you are one. You're not two. I'm going to say something else out of here because it's too good. Saying 106. Jesus said, when you make two into one, you will become children of humanity. And when you say, mountain, move from here, it will move. So what is this? What is all this bringing the two into one? It's just what we've said with being childlike forever now. We're not just singing songs and preaching sermons. This is the life of the child, of the foal, of the kid. And the more you try to fix this with your manhood, the sloppier it gets and the muddier the water gets. The more you try to fix your life with your own strength, with your own hand, the more troubled the water gets, and you don't see the reflection of who you really are. You're muddying the water of your soul. But here Jesus, what is He saying? Come unto me, all you that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and you shall find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. I want to quote this from a movie called The Stalker. I haven't watched this movie, but this is a fantastic quote. This may be a terrible movie. I don't know. I've never seen it. But it's a fantastic quote. May everything come true. May they believe and may they laugh at their passions. For what they call passion is not really the energy of the soul, but merely friction between the soul and the outside world. But above all, may they believe in themselves and become as helpless as children. For softness is great and strength is worthless. When a man is born, he is soft and pliable. When he dies, he is strong and hard. When a tree grows, it is soft and pliable, but when it's dry and hard, it dies. Hardness and strength are death's companions. Flexibility and softness are the embodiment of life. That which has become hard shall not triumph. And that is what John the Baptist had become. Hard. He took on a battle he shouldn't have ever took on. He lived his whole life prophesying and preparing the way and doing it. And he got caught up in his own ego, in his own manhood, and it cost him his literal head. Jesus, that was his salvation if he would have just listened. His salvation was in the man that he prophesied about, was in the God that did come through his words. He did prepare the way, but he got hard. He got strong, right? And said, Jesus, I'm John the Baptist. Are you Jesus? Are you who you said you were? And every time that we clench a fist and we say, you are not who you said you would be, you're getting harder. But it takes the faith of a little child to take that clenched fist and say, please, Father, remind me who I am. Show me who I am. I don't know what I'm going through. I don't know what situation you're going through. I don't know where you're at, what's going on. Those of you watching at home, I don't know your situation. But I will ask you if you have a clenched fist, and if you've got hard, and if you've got brittle and strong, open up your hand like a child again and say, God, make me pliable. Make me soft. Make me childlike. And then an eagle will land beside of you. And you can mount up on his wings. You can mount up on the wings as eagles, and you can run and not faint. You can soar on the wings of eagles, for you will be waiting and tying yourself into the one truth. Those that wait upon the Lord will renew their strength. Come unto me, ye who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. When the two become one. The two become one when you realize I am more than this flesh and blood. That the living God inhabits this body. That I am not identified by what I go do on Monday morning. Oh my God. C.S. Lewis. We got to read C.S. Lewis. We said this the other night. We got to read it. I put it in here because I was afraid this would happen, and it has. The weight of glory. The weight of glory. This is C.S. Lewis, right? The blue flower guy, right? The load or weight of or burden of my neighbor's glory should be laid on my back. A load so heavy that only humility can carry it. And the backs of the proud will be broken. It is a serious thing to live in a society of possible gods and goddesses. To remember that the dullest and most uninteresting person you talk to may one day be a creature of which if you saw it now, you would be strongly tempted to worship. Remember what the Gospel of Thomas says? When you see one not born of woman, you will fall on your knees and worship, for that is your Father. Onward. There are no ordinary people. You have never talked to a mere mortal. Nations, cultures, arts, civilization, these are mortal. And their life, this is huge, is to ours as the life of a gnat. So all this stuff that you are upholding and all these plates you're spinning and all this ego that you've built your life to be, compared to the life that you really are, the person that you've always been, is the life of a gnat. And we know what we do with gnats. Right? You get gnats in the summertime, you put out some vinegar or something, right? You put a little vinegar with a little bit of what's that? Help me? Huh? No, what's that plastic we put on? Saran wrap? You put out a little bit of vinegar, and you put that saran wrap over top of it, and you poke a few holes in there, and them little gnats will go down in there. And then they'll go. We get rid of the gnats because they're a nuisance. Right? So what's a nuisance? You trying to figure all this out as a big boy and a big girl. You a big man? You a big man? Got your big boy pants on? We don't have to figure it out as hard, brittle, smart geniuses. We figure it out by becoming soft and pliable. I think I'm just about done. Turn to Matthew 13 and we'll wrap up. Matthew 13 shouldn't be too big of a stretch. Matthew 13, verse 44 and 46. 44 and 46. Almost done. Almost done. I promise. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a treasure hid in a field, the which when a man hath found, he hideth, and for joy thereof goeth and selleth all that he hath, and buyeth that field. Again, the kingdom is like unto a merchant man seeking goodly pearls. And when he had found one pearl of great price, went and sold all that he had and bought it. So what is the pearl of great price? It's you, Jeff. It's you, Holly. It's you, Alejandro. It's you, Margie. It's you, Nisi. It's you, David. It's you, Wister. It's you, Malachi. You're the pearl. It's you listening at home. It's you listening to this 10 years from now. You're the pearl. And you can retrieve it by singing the name of your Father over your situation, over the toil, over the work, over the laboring, over the striving. Consider the lilies, for they neither toil nor spin, and Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed as one of these. You are loved right now. You're loved. I feel this for you. I don't know who you are watching this right now. You are loved. And you can lay down your heavy burden. You can lay down your anthropos. You can lay down your manhood. You can lay down your striving, your hard, tough, clenched fist, and trade it in for an open hand. It says, remind me who I am. Put my robe back on, because I've retrieved this pearl. We found the pearl. We found the pearl of great price in this life. Do you know how blessed we are? Do you know how radically unbelievable this truth is? That you have found it. You have found something that Napoleon himself didn't find. You have found something that kings that have lived and conquered, mainly, maybe the whole world almost, they didn't find what you're finding right now. They didn't find this pearl of great price. They thought they could conquer and find it. But it's found in a little boy who will get up here and play his guitar. It's found in a little girl who wants to read the book her dad's, or reading the book with her dad and asking her dad every day, have you finished the book? Have you finished the book? And as I'm reading the book, I'm becoming one with this truth and this reality that we are the pearl of great price. I'm going to leave you with one thing. And take it for what you will. This is out of the Gospel of Thomas, and I'll leave it alone. But Jesus said, do not worry from morning to evening, and from evening to morning about what you will wear. His disciples said, when will you appear to us, and when shall we see you? Check this out. Jesus said, when you strip without being ashamed, and you take your clothes and put them under your feet like little children and trample them, then you will see the child of the living one, and you will not be afraid. So take off the garments of your manhood. Take off the garments of Egypt. Take off the garments that identify you with this life of toil. Put them under your feet. And start dancing over the reality that you're not wearing that anymore. I'm wearing my robe. I'm wearing my robe because I found this pearl in this meat suit. Yes. Our righteousness is as filthy rags, but He makes us clean from the inside out. From the inside out. My soul cries out. That's what happens. My heart and my spirit just percolates with this truth. And I pray that it does for you as well. So, those of you watching at home, we invite you to come in person. Be a part of New Testament Church of the Firstborn, the Gathering Echo. Be a part of what we have going on. Be a part of the family. Let us minister to you. If you need resources, message us. Send us a private message. If you have questions, throw them in the live stream. We'll get back to them. We invite you to give. Give to the provision of this ministry to grow this so we can go to the ends of the earth with this truth of the pearl, with this truth that we are a pearl of great price. And say it with me. I love Him because He first loved me.